When you listen to the Democratic candidates, particularly the younger ones, you pick up an unusual sense of mission in each of them. These people truly believe in their candidacies. Don't get me wrong, I don't mean that they are promoting policies they really care about. I mean that they earnestly believe that they have been put on earth to deplatform Donald Trump, that only they can do it. Trump has this effect on people. He has made millions of Americans feel as if the sky is the limit. Jason and I here at Blue Collar Logic are examples. Before Trump, we posted opinions on Facebook, and a good post would get maybe 75 or 100 likes. My biggest ever Facebook thread topped out at something like 600 comments. That felt absolutely massive. And that was a total fluke. 20 was about average. But after Trump was elected and Jason came up with the idea of a video channel, we were like, why not? It was suddenly obvious that absolutely anything was possible. So unlikely was Trump's political rise that it actually broke the very idea of what a rise was. Every day since he entered the race, he has completely confounded every notion of what this process is all about. First, his candidacy derailed the basic idea of a candidacy. Then his successes week by week exposed the old-school pundits as having a far looser grasp on what was really happening in the United States than we'd given them credit for. And then the polling was so wrong. All of America now understands that method as a flawed way to sum up a candidate. I'm almost positive that when Beto looks at his numbers, he's thinking, the polls are wrong. Look at Trump. This Trump bump isn't just happening in Washington and the media. How many more late-night comedians now have shows where they comment on politics? It's like The Daily Show gave birth to a litter of pups, and they all became miniature versions of Jon Stewart. How many times a year did you hear the name Alyssa Milano before Trump was elected? None? Yeah, in a good year, her name was mentioned just about none times. But Trump made her feel that anything was possible, and so up she came out of her post-Danza obscurity, spouting all sorts of crazy things. And people listened. Kind of. The first person to demonstrate the Trump bump was Rosie O'Donnell, of course. Her feud with Trump kept her in the national dialogue long after her career had stalled. And this started way before DJT ran for office. I'm sure that this was not lost on Megyn Kelly. She had been written off by the Big Three alphabet networks as part of Fox News' bimbo brigade. Yes, she was regularly called the blonde bimbo by those on the left. But when she turned on Trump, suddenly she was Joan of friggin' Arc. Suddenly she was moving to an Oprah-style show at NBC. She rode the anti-Trump hysteria happening at Rockefeller Center to a $69 million contract. CNN is full of people who were reporters until they went full Trump hate and were instantly promoted to anchor slots. Chris Cuomo and Jake Tapper? Were these guys household names in 2016? How many others have risen from invisibility to being cultural heroes? Stormy Daniels? This was a washed-up mid-level porno actress. She made her living boning strangers on camera for the secret satisfaction of lonely guys in darkened rooms. She was a professional masturbation aide, but she teamed with a shyster lawyer and became an instant hero. Her lawyer was praised so highly and constantly that people in the left-wing media were actually talking about him running for president. I was a liberal for decades and had hundreds of progressive friends. Most of them had declared George W. Bush to be a war criminal, a lying, murderous scum who was somehow both a dunce and an evil mastermind. But in the course of a single 24-hour news cycle, the man from Crawford became, to the left, the very decent man many of us always assumed him to be. All he had to do was criticize Trump. The Trump bump seemed to be available to just about anybody. But like a Cinderella spell, the enchantment is not necessarily permanent. Megyn Kelly soon forgot where she was. She forgot that her new friends don't allow free speech, and her careless comments sent her back into the obscurity from which Fox had once plucked her. Oops, the Trump bump is tricky business. Michael Avenatti also soon realized that magical coaches have a way of turning back into pumpkins just when the grand ball is at its glorious peak. And a lot of ordinary knaves ran into a wall when they tried to hijack the Trump bump without getting their plan in place. Jussie Smollett is now nothing more than a slight logistical problem for the scriptwriting team at Empire. Yes, the magic wand of Donald Trump is a capricious thing with a mysterious logic all its own. People rise and fall willy-nilly as if guided by a magic spell. Black Lives Matter stopped mattering, but Candace Owens' dainty foot perfectly matched the slipper held forth by Prince Charlie Kirk. Mark Levin found his anti-Trump button and clicked it off just in time to ride the rocket, while others held fast and blew up on the pad. Yes, we've switched metaphors, sue me. George Will and Bill Kristol and Michael Medved and Jonah Goldberg are still out there circling quietly in the heavens like distant satellites, but their influence has nosedived faster than Howard Stern's did when he caught that interstellar ship to Sirius. That would be the Dog Star, for those who don't know. And it wasn't only anti-Trumpers who found the Trump bump hard to manage. Even dear, courageous Annie Coulter is now on the outs. She was the only one who truly took Donald Trump seriously. And now she's staring at her word processor trying to find an angle. She herself promoted the one man on earth capable of outshining her in the arts of outrage production and liberal head detonation. It's almost like Ann Coulter wrote a crazy freewheeling book and its hero came to life. And now she's on the sidelines wondering what to do next. Oh, hell, let's switch metaphors again. There's no law about switching metaphors. Not anymore. It turns out that when Trump talked about draining the swamp, he was referring to a lot more than Washington. Turns out that there was a type of swamp everywhere. The swamp is just everything that has become bogged down within itself. The Trump bump is available to anybody anywhere whose shoes are stuck in the mud. Is there a way of understanding the Trump bump? Roughly, I think the man embodies a cultural force of change. He unlocks entropy in some strange way. Those who never could rise suddenly can rise. Those who thought they could never fall look down and find that the ground has dissolved beneath their feet. Every limitation that a lot of us have assumed to exist in our lives has faded away, while the hammer of karma has finally found any number of scoundrels. This all happens within the same energetic current and can always be traced back to the president in some way. The Me Too movement is a perfect example. The whole thing was simply an extension of the Pussy Hat movement, which was itself a reaction to the offhand comment made to Billy Bush. That energetic current first swept up a few million women who suddenly began to knit with a furious sense of purpose. Then it morphed into a neo-feminist reaction to all men grabbing for any female part anywhere, and stars were born by telling their tales of woe. Then it bubbled up into a full-tilt, torches at midnight monster hunt. And like every other example of the Trump bump, it took as many down as it raised up. For every Christine Blasey Ford, it turns out there would have to be a Charlie Rose and a Matt Lauer. The Trump bump was the underlying energy, but when that buzz spreads to a mob, nobody is safe. Ask the corpse of Jeffrey Epstein and the rotting carcass of the Weinstein Company. And it isn't just people who go through this. Ideas are being bumped around wildly as well. Sometimes I'll be driving along and hear that Trump has acted on some well-worn right-wing talking point, that he has actually moved the frigging embassy to Jerusalem, that he actually did take us out of both the Iran deal and the Paris Accords. And I will feel kind of giddy. Presidents don't really do these sorts of things, do they? It has happened so rarely in my life that a political figure ever did anything that was not calculated to keep him or her in Washington that I suddenly just laugh out loud when I hear about something Trump has said or done. Ideas have been released from their glass front cabinets and the walnut-paneled studies of political thinkers and are being batted around like beach balls at a Trump rally. Why should we kowtow to NATO countries for the privilege of protecting them? Why not buy Greenland? What is happening in America right now is a rethinking of thinking. And love him or hate him, Donald Trump is the catalyst. All over the world, this is happening. Boris Johnson is just the most obvious of the Trump doppelgangers. Politicians are rising up everywhere and being called the English Trump or the Brazilian Trump or the Italian Trump. In closing, I'll say that all energy is potentially tricky. Electricity can either light your lamps or set your house on fire. And just as the current coming out of an electrical generating plant is simply converting energy from wherever it was stored by nature, so too is the energy that's been released across the country and across the world. Trump is not uranium. Trump is the nuclear reaction that releases the energy in us. How we apply that is up to us all. The left has used it to fuel hatred and to reboot socialism. Hopefully we are doing more productive things. I see my current role as similar to the one I served in my 20s at a punk rock concert. I was one of the guys who patrolled the edges of the mosh pit trying to prevent the pogoing masses from hurting themselves or others. My job was to catch the stray elbow, arrest the high-speed stumble, steer the stage diver safely to the ground. I'm doing a version of that now, trying to modify the chaos a bit without ruining the show. Your job is whatever you see as your job. The only rule, in my view, is that when you allow the Trump bump to energize your life, you need to keep your own moral code intact. That is your steering mechanism and your suspension. Let this man supercharge your engines in whatever direction, but remember that anytime you soup up the motor, you need to beef up the brakes as well. So get out there and have some fun. Someday this will all die down. Let's all make sure that we have drained our own personal swamps by the time that happens. What we build on the reclaimed ground is nobody's job but ours. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.